Good afternoon. My name is Simon Elson. I'm very pleased to welcome Mark Wheatley to our call. Mark's been a guest previously and has come back to, carry on the discussion we had about the energy crisis, the size of the bills that as small business owners we're all kind of faced with, and some of the things that have changed in the last few weeks. So Mark is head of channel sales at Full Power Utilities and has been in the energy industry for more than 6 years now. So loads of current experience, which is great. And perhaps we could start, Mark, with you just explaining a little bit about what you and Full Power Utilities do for small business owners.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're based in Boreham Woods in northwest London. Started in 1997. It was a company started by Mark Littman, our founder director, when the energy markets deregulated. And for sort of many years, we were just a sort of a brokerage, essentially, an energy broker. Our services have developed an awful lot over the years, so we don't refer to ourselves as brokers anymore. We prefer the phrase consultants. But we help businesses of all sizes with energy procurements, contract management, energy efficiency ideas and solutions, even into EV migration as well these days. So kind of an all-encompassing energy consultancy, if you will.
Yeah, brilliant. And so you run channel sales, which I don't know how many people you've got representing Full Power these days, but it's a large number, right?
Yeah, so a bit of a backstory to this. The energy industry for many years has been blighted with overly aggressive salespeople, cold calling, verbal contracts, things that we don't agree. We don't agree with any of that. So we took a bit of a stance 12, 13 years ago now that we wouldn't be doing any of that type of activity. It didn't stop, the cold calling and marketing didn't stop immediately, but we started to get rid of it out of our business, and we haven't been doing any of that for the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years. So all of our business is inbound. So all of our inquiries come to us via partnerships. So we partner with a lot of trade associations and membership organisations. I was actually on Tuesday, I was down in Exeter delivering a talk to the Builders Merchants Federation, which was an interesting one. And other than that, we also have a small army of introducers that get to know our business, get to know our services, and they refer business owners to us that they know in their local communities. So yeah, it works incredibly well.
Terrific. So the topic here is how we deal with the current energy crisis, and the current times. We've got high inflation, we've got interest rates rising, and everything else that's going on. The last thing in the world we need is for Mr. Putin to be putting pressure on the globe and forcing energy prices up. So what's the root cause, Mark, behind the huge fluctuation that we see in terms of energy prices? It went up hugely. So I know it's dropped a little bit in certain areas, but perhaps you could give a bit of the backstory behind the cause.
Yeah, certainly. So there's kind of 3 stages to the energy crisis over the last 18 months. So we started to see wholesale energy prices increase June, July of last year. And there's a number of factors involved there. So at the beginning of 2021, we had much lower than expected wind generation. So not a lot of power generated through our onshore and offshore wind farms. So that started to put pressure immediately on prices. There were then a few quite random events that happened that put additional pressure on the UK's energy market. So first of all, there was a fire at a power converter station down in Kent. So for those that don't know, we import some of our electricity from France.
Yeah.
There's 2 big cables from France into the UK. So we take some of their electricity, and one of those cables was blown out. So that put pressure on electricity prices. And then there were other unplanned outages in production facilities in the North Sea and in Norway, where we buy a lot of our gas. And that was a hangover from COVID. So a lot of those sort of planned maintenance schedules that they had were put on hold because of COVID, and then they had to push them further down the track, and they all kind of hit in 2021. Okay. So we started to see prices increase through July, August and September, and we thought they had reached a peak in October end of September, beginning of October 2021. And we were seeing prices that we never thought possible. But then, of course, fast forward a few months and one country invades another, and there was huge fear in the markets. Suppliers and generators didn't know how to respond. They didn't know what that was going to mean for Europe and the UK in terms of its future energy security. We now know. So Russia has shut off the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. So there's no gas coming into mainland Europe from Russia. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which has been in development for many years at a huge cost, never went online. So the Germans sort of reacted and said, right, we're not going to allow gas to come through that pipeline either. So essentially, the countries like Germany, France, and other countries in Europe were all of a sudden choked off from their normal gas supply. Now, what people would have heard in the media, I'm sure a lot, is, yeah, but the UK, we only get 3% of our gas from Russia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's true. So then people say, so why does this affect us? Well, the fact that countries like Germany, who were getting sort of 60% of their gas from Russia, all of a sudden aren't getting it. They need to go and find alternative sources. And they go to the sources that we go to buy our gas. And then, of course, there's a bidding war in terms of LNG shipments and gas from Norway and other producers. And, of course, our rates go up. So the energy market is a global market. And if there's, an event such as the huge event that's obviously happening in Ukraine at the moment, it's going to impact everyone in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So that happened, and we saw another record high in March. And again, we were like, well, okay, we've never seen prices this high. Surely they can't go any higher. We then get into the summer where we are now, and where we were, in sort of August, and that's where we saw the real peak, and that was down to fears over the winter. So it was, okay, are we going to run out of gas? And there were murmurs of, planned power outages, and is the UK if the gas stores are going to completely run out? Are we going to be able to heat our homes and so on? All of that fear has subsided a little bit in recent weeks, and that's because I'm sure everyone will agree we've had an unseasonably mild autumn so far. I mean, I was walking around in a t-shirt, the weekend before last, and 20 odd degrees. It seems a bit strange, but that has been a blessing because it means that the UK's gas stores are still effectively at capacity. What the UK has done very well is we've brought in a lot of LNG, so liquefied natural gas, from the US, because they've started exporting more to us to help with the situation. And it means our stores are still high. We've not been depleting that because we've not been turning our heating on. I don't know about you, Simon, but I haven't turned mine on.
No, not been necessary. No, absolutely.
Exactly. So what that's led to is a softening in the market. Prices have slowly fallen over the last 2 to 3 weeks, but we don't expect that to last because the cold weather will come.
Yeah.
And we will turn our heating on, and prices will start to increase as a result.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's kind of been those 3 stages, and it's just kind of we've sort of limped from one issue to another, but it has softened slightly. And what we're saying to businesses at the moment, just to digress slightly, I guess, if you are in an energy contract and a fixed energy contract at the moment, but it's due to end in the next 3 to 4 months, we believe now is a buying window.
Okay.
So to give you an idea, I was quoting a pub restaurant over in Wales, and we quoted 1 week. The owner of said pub decided that they didn't want to move that week. They wanted to sit tight. Great decision, because a week later, the quotes we were securing had fallen by about 15-20%.
Oh, really? Wow.
And to them, that's a saving of, a few thousand quid a year. That's a big difference.
Yeah, huge, isn't it? Yeah. And that
sorry.
I was going to say the volatility is absolutely what you don't need as a business owner, isn't it? You need stability. I mean, even if the price is 10 or 20% higher, you kind of want it to be consistent, so that way you can come up with a strategy to deal with it. When when it's doing that, you've got the peaks and troughs. It makes it really, really hard to deal with. So, so you anticipating that now, if I was to look at switching my contract, would be a good time to lock it in for a couple of years in order to avoid any price rises that are coming early part of next year?
Yeah. So as I said, as we go through the winter months, the UK's gas, and by the way, for those that are saying, Mark, you're talking a lot about gas here, what about electricity? Well, the UK generates a lot of its electricity through the burning of natural gas. So the two are linked.
Yeah.
So as the winter rolls on and we start to burn through the gas, there's a bit more fear and that enters the market, and prices start to increase again. So what we're suggesting is now, as prices have fallen, there is a buying window, and we would say people look to fix now. But the question then becomes, okay, but how long? Do we take a 12-month term? Do we take a 24-month term?
Yeah.
It's very, very hard for us to say, no, definitely do this, because the last 18 months have told us
volatility is huge, isn't it? Yeah.
We can't predict anything. But what we are finding is that the majority of our clients are taking 12-month contracts, but we're starting to see more that are going for 24-month contracts, for the exact reason that you mentioned, Simon, which is that people want budget certainty, and they want to know what they're going to be paying for the next couple of years, so that they can start to plan accordingly. So yeah, we've seen an uptake in a 24-month term in recent weeks. People are shying away from any longer than that, and that's a good decision, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just talk a bit about government support, because whilst the cause of the increase in prices is not directly due to the government's misbehaviour or whatever else might have been going on in recent weeks, it's kind of external forces, I guess you could argue. Their support has been quite strong, certainly for the consumer. But what about the business? What have small businesses in particular been able to collect from the government by way of support or guarantee or otherwise?
Okay, so I'm going to go through this in a little bit of detail, and apologies if I lose anyone, because it's not the most simplistic sort of way that the government are delivering and targeting their support, and targeting is important, because when Liz Truss was in power, the announcement came out there was going to be a bit of a blanket approach to support for businesses, and they were going to offer, they were essentially going to guarantee a wholesale price for your gas and electricity, and that was going to be applied through the months from the 1st of October 22 to the 31st of March 2023. The government have now changed their approach, and the way they're working it is on a daily published wholesale rate. So for those that don't know or aren't aware, the price that you pay for your gas and electricity is made up of many components, but two main, we can group them into two main components. You have the commodity cost, which is the gas and electricity itself, and then you have the non-commodity costs, which are everything else. So that includes taxes, transportation charges, balancing charges, green levies, etc., etc. There are more than 10 in the price that you pay for electricity, so it's quite a complicated pricing structure. What the government have offered, or what they're doing, so not offered, what they're delivering, is support on the wholesale elements of the price you pay for your gas and electricity. So I'll run you a quick example. What the government do is, on a weekly basis now, they publish their wholesale rates, their daily wholesale rates, and you can go onto their website and you can see these rates going back until the 1st of December 2021.
Okay.
So if you have signed a gas or electricity contract on or after the 1st of December 2021, you are eligible for support, and that support will cover your consumption between the 1st of October 22 and the 31st of March 23.
Okay.
Now, the level of support you get, or the level of the discount you get on your energy bill, is based on the date that you secured your contract. So, Simon, let's say for your offices, you secured a contract on the 1st of September 22. You can go onto the government website and you can check for, let's just talk electricity for a minute. You can check the published wholesale electricity rate for the 1st of September 22. the government's website will give you the discounts that can be applied to your bill. Now, you don't have to worry about it. And by the way, if everyone's going, okay, what kind of discount is this?
Yeah.
At the moment, it typically ranges between 30 and 35 pence, or 30 and 40 pence, actually, more accurately, per kilowatt for your electricity supply. And that discount will be applied to your bills automatically by your supplier.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you secured a price, Simon, for your electricity supply at 60p,
yeah,
and your discount, your energy bill discount was 35p, then the rate you're going to be paying is 25p.
Got it.
For those 6 months. Now, what we've done at Full Power is we understand that's a little bit to sort of get your head around. We've actually created our own calculator, which is just an Excel sheet. Which, if anyone on the call today wants that, we can gladly send that over.
Yeah.
All the calculator requires you to do is put in 3 bits of information, which is your estimated annual consumption, the date that you signed your contract, and the percentage of your annual consumption that you believe you would consume during that 6-month support window. Okay. And what our calculator then does, it goes, this is your discount, and that's how much money you're going to get from the government.
Got it. Okay. Would you be good enough to send that calculator to me afterwards, Mark, and I'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of it? Is that okay?
Of course. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, fantastic. So that's really interesting. I mean, it's a shame it's not a little bit simpler to kind of explain, but again, nonetheless, great support. So, I mean, I know a lot of consumers, a lot of people that I know have been very grateful for the £66 they've been getting off their energy bill, which is hugely beneficial. So my next question was going to be, what are you advising clients to do? You've already talked about a couple of things. So now is a good time to look, and buying window, as you described it, now is a good time to look. Does that apply for both gas and electricity? Are we seeing the same volatility in both because of what you said earlier on, which is most of our electricity is generated by burning gas? How ironic is that?
Yes, yes, but at the moment the buying window is open, in my opinion, for both gas and electricity. We've seen both commodities drop off in prices, and what we've also seen as well in the last couple of weeks is more suppliers come back online. So in the months of August and September, I mean, we have access as a consultancy to around 40 energy suppliers.
Okay.
In the months of sort of August, September, there 6 or 7 of those were active in the market. The rest just weren't interested. Even some of the big players like Scottish Power, E.ON, or E.ON Next, as they're now called, they just weren't interested in taking on new business.
Yeah.
We've now seen E.ON Next have just re-entered the market in the last few days, and we've seen lots of other suppliers such as Dice Energy, also Gas, and a few others that have come back online. So there's now more choice, more options for business owners as well.
Very good. Very good. That's good to hear. And you see that in the consumer space too. I mean, I'm an Octopus customer in the consumer space, and I know they weren't taking on anybody new. You couldn't change your tariff or anything else, and that's suddenly unlocked now. So I drive an EV. We'll talk about EVs in a minute, but I'm interested in their overnight charging rate and what that looks like, because I prefer to charge at home than charge commercially out at some grid serve or some other location. So obviously, everybody's concerned about the amount of money they're paying. They're concerned that bills are rising, but I've been quite surprised at the number of business owners I talk to who haven't focused on saving energy in their current business premises. Some simple advice from you. What are the things you should be looking to do that can make a difference to the size of your energy bill?
Yeah, so there's there's CapEx projects that you can look at. I'll come on to those in a second, but there's also some very, very simple things that you can do within your operations. So I'm sure everyone's heard this before, but just check your lighting. Check the lighting in your property. Simon, you and I were talking just before we came on air about the fact that I'd spotted a light bulb in my house that was a halogen light bulb, and the difference that makes to your consumption is quite incredible. So if you, in your business premises, do take a look and do a lighting retrofit if you need to. It's a relatively cost-effective way of doing it, and it will have a nice impact on your energy consumption for years to come. If you have a business in the hospitality sector, I would advise that you talk to your team. So if you run a pub or a restaurant or a cafe, talk to your team and really make them aware of how important energy conservation is, because of the cost of it at present. So I used to work in a restaurant years ago, and countless times you'd walk into the kitchen and one of the chefs has left the freezer door wide open because it's a big walk-in freezer, and they just leave it because they're constantly in and out. I mean, back then it wasn't such a big talking point, but now just make sure your team are aware that they're turning off hot water taps, they're shutting doors behind them. I'm dealing with a community centre at the moment, and the lady that runs the centre is just incredibly frustrated that the people that come to the site are just constantly leaving the doors open. And she's saying, I don't know how to get them to shut the doors behind them. But it's just simple things like that really will make a difference. And then you've got sort of bigger projects that you can look at. So if you've got, some money in the bank and you're thinking, okay, maybe I can do some capital expenditure here and look at some energy, proper energy efficiency solutions, there are a few available to you. So obviously solar installations is one. That very much depends on your particular site, your property. Have you got roof space? Is the roof space angled correctly? Where you are in the country, of course, has a big impact on that as well. But what I would say is that the cost of solar installations has come down immensely over the last 10 years. It's fallen by around 80%. So they're a lot more cost effective. But as you can probably imagine, because of the energy crisis, inquiries into solar installations have gone through the roof. No pun intended. And we're talking, you're looking well into Q2, Q3 of next year before you're going to get someone around to be able to do an installation in most cases. So a bit more of a longer term project perhaps. And then there are other sort of solutions such as combined heat and power systems. You can look at heat source pumps and so on and so on. So there are a few options out there, but you, as I said, you need to have some money in the bank to look at those for sure.
So you're going to be investing some money now to reap the rewards, going forwards, hopefully. And solar, I think you're absolutely right, is one of those incredible things. Again, driving an EV, having solar panels on the house. I mean, I fill my entire car up for about £6 and do 300 miles on it. It's astonishing how effective that is. And from a business point of view, if I owned the building I was in, I don't, but if I did, I'd be putting solar panels on the roof without a shadow of a doubt. But do you think that is seeping into the business owner's mindset? The sustainable energy efficiency, and so on and so forth. Is that becoming something that people think about on a regular basis? Because certainly it wasn't. I mean, my wife and I were talking yesterday. We'd think nothing of turning the heating on at the beginning of October, and it would be on pretty permanently until the end of March, and we haven't turned it on yet. That's not normal, but we're doing that specifically because we know it's going to be expensive. Is that true of business owners? Do you think they're paying that much attention?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. We're having more and more conversations like that. So again, just to go back to the example of the community centre that I'm working with, they do have some cash in the bank, which they built up over the years. And they are now looking at having their boilers replaced because they've had someone in and their boilers are running at about 65-70% efficiency.
Right.
So they can get a new one. It's a substantial investment, but it will reduce their gas consumption considerably. So again, if a business owner is thinking, right, maybe it's something I need to look at, what I would propose that business owners do first is they have an energy audit carried out. So it's not something that we do ourselves. We have a partner that we can recommend, but someone would come down to your site, they take a look at your premises, look at where there are current inefficiencies, and then they draw up a report to make recommendations. And they will cover things like solar installations, replacing your boilers, your lighting, and so on and so on. And I would certainly start there rather than going in blind and going, right, I just want some solar panels. Okay, great, but that might not be the best solution. So I would advise that you have someone come down and carry out an audit. And look, even in my own home, I spoke to a colleague, one of our introducers, in fact, who's an EPC assessor, and I just said, look, I can feel when I turn the heating on, I can feel it escaping the house really, really quickly. And I talked him through the sort of layout of our house, and he just made some really simple suggestions. So the front of our house, we have a porch, but it's a wooden frame porch, so it's not bricks and mortar. and there's no internal door between the house and the porch, so the heat is just, flying through there. Yeah, and then the other side of to the back of the property, there's a big hole in the back of our wall behind where our washer dryer is, and that's obviously was there at one point to allow heat to escape. But what that's created is an air channel, and cold air is just flowing through the house.
Right.
So he said, block up the hole. If you can't do it properly, just cut out a cardboard box and put it in. And then he said, between sort of your internal house and your porch, just put up a heavy set curtain, and that will stop the airflow, and it will stop heat escape. Well, not all heat, obviously, but it will help
reduce it dramatically.
Really cost effective suggestions that will make a difference, and there'll be plenty of those within a business premises for sure.
Yeah, without doubt. And the temptation to leave at night and leave your PC on, leave the server on, forget to turn the TV off, all of that stuff costs money. And I think one of the things, certainly at home, again, you've got 4 or 5 TVs in your house, you leave them on standby. If you turn them all off one night and then watch the smart meter, it's amazing how much power they draw even on standby.
Yeah, absolutely.
So smart meter, you've got a smart meter at home, I'm sure, Mark. Are smart meters for business, is that something that should be a reality?
Yes, and the industry is pushing really heavily for this, because one of the biggest headaches that the energy suppliers have, and in fact business owners and us at Full Power, we deal with this all the time, is estimated meter reads. So if you're a business owner and you don't have a smart meter and you're not regularly submitting your meter reads, your energy supplier is going to guess what you've consumed and then bill you based on that guess, on that estimate. The suppliers don't want to do it because they don't know whether they're over or undercharging you, and if they're overcharging you and then you raise a complaint over it, then they have to get someone in on their team to correct that issue. It's a lot of administration. So suppliers are pushing for smart meter installations, so much so that some suppliers are offering quotes on the basis that if you don't have a smart meter, they will install one. There are some people that would say, I don't trust smart meters. I think, I think they're rigged in the supplier's favor or whatever. I think that's a bit far reaching, but, people have their opinions. But my suggestion would definitely be, where you can, get one installed. It saves you time, it saves your supplier time, and hopefully it means that suppliers can start offering better rates because they haven't got as much resource into managing your account.
Absolutely, and it makes you more conscious. I think that's the other thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Great, that's been extremely educational, Mark. I really appreciate that. So we've got 3 minutes left, and I've got a question that's just popped up in the question box, and the question is, future of energy in the UK, particularly sustainable and net zero targets. Is the current energy crisis going to help with those targets? In other words, I guess if I interpret that, people are being more careful and therefore our emissions should be less, et cetera, et cetera. What does sustainable energy look like in the UK in the future?
Yeah,
you talked about no wind at the beginning, right? You said no wind, and therefore we had to rely on other sources.
I think there's a few elements to that question, actually. It's quite an interesting one. So I think as a topic, net zero has fallen by the wayside in the last 18 months because, well, I say 12 months, we only had COP26, 12 months ago. But because of the energy crisis, where we were having conversations before with business owners about their net zero targets, they just don't want to talk about it now. All they're interested in is, I just need the cheapest energy supply possible. And unfortunately, that's not always a green or renewable product. But I think that the energy crisis has brought home and made our government realise that as a country, we need to be able to rely on our own energy sources a bit more. And that comes in the form of solar farms, onshore and offshore wind farms, and more long-term nuclear. Now, I was at an event yesterday, and I was talking to a lady about nuclear who was actually she's Polish, and she remembers the disaster in Chernobyl. And so she had a very negative sort of view on nuclear, and I understand that, but it is a genuinely great source of energy, and the safety around it is improved an awful lot. I mean, France gets, I think, don't quote me exactly on this, but I think it's 80 to 90% of their electricity from nuclear.
Right.
The UK is really, really far behind the curve there. the issue is that if the government say today, okay, let's build a nuclear power plant, it's 25 years before it's fully operational. So I think what it has done, the energy crisis, is made the government sit up and realize, okay, we need to invest more in our own energy sources, and those energy sources are largely renewable. So whilst the topic of net zero has dropped off a little bit, I think the current situation has been good for the future of renewables in the UK for sure. And look, there are always concerns around the reliability of renewables. So as you said, if the wind stops, we haven't got any electricity, so we need to go and fire up a coal power station somewhere. But storage is coming on, so battery technology is improving. In fact, there's been a big story in the news over the last couple of days over a startup battery firm that's building up or planning to build a huge facility in Blythe. It looks like they're about to run out of money, but
I saw that.
Hopefully that doesn't happen, because there is a lot of potential in battery storage. Although again, people will always comment that batteries themselves aren't particularly great for the environment. But I think it's a case of human civilization is developing, and we develop a solution to a problem that's here and now. So the problem we have here and now is carbon emissions. So we need to deal with that. And look, yes, the solutions we come up with aren't going to be perfect. They're going to have their own issues, but we're sort of moving along, and I think that will continue.
Absolutely. Great answer. And great to talk to somebody who's inside that whole energy business every day, because you see and hear things that we never will. So fantastic. That's been a brilliant Munch and Learn. Appreciate you taking the time, as always, Mark. I'm sure we'll have you back at some point in the future. Thanks to everybody that dialed in. I will send out a couple of documents that Mark has kindly provided me with. And Mark, if you send me that calculator, I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of it. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for attending, and see you soon. Take care, Mark.
Thank you. Cheers.